Hello, dear listener. I have something truly special to share. It's an exclusive invitation to join me in Mexico for an intimate and luxurious 3-day retreat along the beautiful Pacific coast of Zihuatanejo, taking place the weekend of the spring equinox, March 18th through the 20th. There's also an optional day to stay through the 21st for some special ceremonies that are happening in the area for the equinox. But the retreat itself is the 18th through the 20th, really an opportunity not to be missed. And I'm offering one lucky listener a discounted ticket on this weekend that I've just been loving into being actually for several years now as COVID and, everything. But when we conceived of building this place, our home down here, it's really what we envisioned, bringing people down here for retreats, for trainings, because we felt and we knew that this space was special. And as people keep coming down and we keep getting the feedback, how magical it is, we want to share it in a really intentional way. Be working with the 4 elements, earth, air, fire, water, the metaphors of the season. We'll set sight on a new vision for our mothering journey and creating a deeper connection to self and Mother Nature. So to win a discounted ticket, rate and review this show on Apple Podcasts. Screenshot it and DM it to me on Instagram at Dr. Gertrude Lyons. And remember, the most important thing to mother is yourself. Give yourself permission to take a retreat this year. And besides, who said mothers can't go on a spring break? I'll see you there.
This is a Soulfire production. Welcome to Mother. No, it's Mother. Welcome to Mother, the show where we can explore our inner mothers to actualize our greatest selves. Through interviews with incredible guests, live coaching sessions, and my own experiences, we're going to dive deep into embracing feminine values and reparenting ourselves. So be prepared to show up, hold space, and be mothered in a way you never have before, but have always needed. It's time we rewrite the Mother Code. Hi, and welcome to episode 41 of Mother, season 2 of Rewrite the Mother Code podcast. Today, I am very excited to be in conversation with and hosting Hunter Clarke-Fields on the Rewrite the Mother Code podcast. Hunter is just a really dedicated, lovely, lovely woman. She is an author. She's author of Raising Good Humans, a mindful guide to breaking the cycle of reactive parenting and raising kind, confident kids. How awesome is that, right? So she's also a mindful mama mentor and the creator of the Mindful Parenting course. So this woman is hugely dedicated and has been dedicated to her own path of self-awareness, mindfulness. We resonated hugely around several topics. What does it mean to, really fully be ourselves, as women, as mothers, as parents? How do we bring mindful practices into, the tumult of mothering and parenting? And how is it possible to break longstanding generational trauma, issues, things that really kind of get stirred up in the whole parenting realm? How do we do that? What does that look like? What are the benefits of it? So that and so much more. Without further ado, let's jump in. Well, I'm super excited about this episode because I have as a guest Hunter Clarke-Fields, and we're going to hear a whole lot about her, but welcome, Hunter. And then I'm going to share a little bit about you, and then I'm going to ask you to share more about yourself. But I do want to first just at least say welcome.
Thanks, Gertrude. I'm so happy to be here.
Great. Well, we're going to get to know Hunter in a number of ways, but just to mention a couple things, Hunter's a mindful mama mentor. She's the author of the book, Raising Good Humans, a mindful guide to breaking the cycle of reactive parenting and raising kind, confident kids. How beautiful is that? All right. So helping parents bring more calm and peace in their daily lives, 20 years of experience in meditation practices, teaching mindfulness to thousands of people worldwide, and then bringing this to the mom sphere specifically in mama mentoring and mindful parenting courses. So welcome again, Hunter. Yay, yay, yay for all of that.
Yay.
Yay. So, and all of your we'll have even more about you in the show notes and bio, but I would love to, personally, and I know my audience will be interested to hear about you and your journey, right? So how did you come to author this book and have these courses? And if you could share a little bit about that journey for you professionally, personally, it's all fair ground.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, it's fair to say like all this work comes out of what I was pretty bad at. I think it's fair to say. I mean, for me, the mindfulness came first in my life, and that I was like this really, I'm like a highly sensitive person. I would be kind of like up and down, kind of roller coastery emotionally.
Mhm.
And my life was always like that. And I remember my father saying to me one time, when I was 10 or 11, I had been crying and he was rubbing my back and he said, Hunter, he said, life is going to always be like this. This is just your artistic nature. And I was like, wow, that sucks. Like, oh, great.
Oh.
Thanks, Dad. So comforting.
Yes.
But he was right. And I realized that I needed some tools pretty quickly. I started reading and studying about mindfulness and Buddhism when I was a teenager.
Mm.
And it really was when I started a regular meditation practice in my 20s that I was finally able to kind of like calm this like roller coaster of life for me. I mean, I was able to get so much more equanimity, and I just didn't fall into these sort of like pits that I would fall into for, all of my life, 27 years of my life until then. It was this really huge game changer for me. And then a couple of years later, I got pregnant and I thought, oh my goodness. I remember I was like sitting in this like Sangha, which is a circle of people practicing mindfulness. I had my big pregnant belly. I rubbed that belly and I thought, oh, like we got this. This is going to be such a calm baby. Like, look, I'm meditating and she's here. Like, this is just going to be amazing. Yeah, it's like,
yes, I know. Yeah, keep going.
You make plans and God laughs. And she, of course, was like really highly sensitive kid, everything from the very beginning. It was sort of fast and furious, and it was really challenging. So, I mean, this is what we all encounter, right? That it is so much more challenging than we think it's going to be. And I was struggling, and I knew, even when she was a baby, like I knew that I needed to take care of myself. Like I had learned that lesson. So I would take her to like the childcare at the YMCA. I would get my exercise in, but it was when she was like around 18 months too and started talking back and that whole thing that I discovered this like rage that came out of me, like this intense anger. And I would just get so triggered by her. And I really realized, it was this wake up call for me. I realized it was like my father's anger coming out of me. It was the same thing. I could see it. It was like a generational pattern. When I had those big upset feelings when I was a kid, I was given the message that was completely unacceptable. Right. Like from my father's anger. And so then I passed down that I could see like, oh my gosh, I'm doing the same thing he did because it feels so unacceptable to me. And it was like exactly what I didn't want to do. This was the most important thing in my life to me at this point. It just was like, I remember like crying on the floor outside her room. I had scared her and she was upset. I remember thinking, I'm a terrible mom. And just feeling incredibly terrible. And, there wasn't really anywhere to go from there. Like I was either going to sit there in a puddle or I had to learn some lessons from this. Yeah. And so everything I do kind of stems from that, like how to calm that reactivity, how to communicate better.
Oh, I love that. There's so many things in what you just shared, but particularly I want to underline, how what we're doing now comes from our personal experience, right? And usually the things that we struggled with, but then found a way with, or, decided to take on, mindfully and consciously and learn something that we then hope to convey to others, right? Not so, partly because we'd love for them not to make the same mistake, but I think what we're going to get at is that how much more what you learned about yourself, what you learned and found possible in the journey, just even, up to what you shared and, how you took from where you had been and, the muscles you had built, and then those muscles got way more challenge than you expected. And that's okay. Right. I think that's what you're trying to say too, is like, that's going to happen, that is okay. But then what can I learn about myself? We're aware and able to pinpoint that, oh, this is a generational pattern, and I don't want to pass this on, and I have choice about passing this on. And there's things I can do about this, and I'd love to hear a little bit more about that. So then, what did that journey look like
I think it's so interesting. And I like to share this story because I was a pretty competent person, at that point, I had been able to, make the grades in school and, gone to grad school. I had, at that point I had a painting career and, had work in shows in New York, I was a person who was able to get things done in life. I'm sure your listener is, a lot of your listeners are highly competent, highly capable people, and we're used to achieving things in life. And then we get to this thing that everybody, lot of people are doing.
Yeah.
And it's oh, wait a minute. Why can't I just not choose how I want to respond here? You know what I mean? How can I not, why is it that I can't just decide how I want to parent my child and then it happens? It's a whole different thing. It's a whole different ballgame. We are dealing with our upbringing. We may have traumas that are generational, that are literally have changed our DNA. We have a nervous system that is triggered for fight or flight or freeze that, is wired for that reactivity. So there's a kind of a lot stacked up here. And so I think it's really important to share that because there's a shame around it. If you yell at your kids, there's a shame around that because none of us want to do that. None of us wake up in the morning and are I think I'm going to yell at that little bit. Right at 2 p.m., I'm just going to freak out at them. No one does that. So, it's we don't want to. And it's really important to understand that biology. So for me at that point, I dove into parenting learning, and I started listening. Big shout out to Todd and Kathy Adams, Zen Parenting Radio. They were great teachers of mine and a whole bunch of other teachers. But what I really got to this, yes, that's what I want to do. I want to do that. I want to parent this way, but how? How is my question. And I got really frustrated with some parenting coaches out there where the instruction was respond this way,
right.
Just respond.
I'm so with you on this. Yes, please keep going. Oh my gosh.
And I couldn't remember any of those good things to say or better ways to respond when I was triggered. It just was not happening. And then of course I found out, about the neuroscience behind that it's actually not even accessible in your brain at that moment. So what that all was missing was all this work with mindfulness that I had started and previously in my life that I really needed to now pick back up again in a major way. Because what happens with a mindfulness practice is that it really helps to calm our nervous system, to help us be less reactive, how it helps us get that place between stimulus and response to choose. And it does that. What's amazing about it does that by like reshaping the brain, right? We build a muscle to be able to calm that reactivity. And so that's what kind of and understanding those triggers and also this big piece of self-compassion, that was all missing from what I was learning from all these wonderful, well-meaning parenting coaches who are teaching communication. They just needed to come together. So that's what I do in mindful parenting is I bring together mindfulness. I bring together self-compassion. I bring that together with communication because honestly, mindfulness is not enough. It's not enough to just say, I'm just going to calm my reactivity because then, and I know this because I made this mistake, is that you calm down and then you say something dumb that your parents might have said and your highly sensitive child is triggered all over again. So you need both of them. They really need each other. It really is. I think of mindfulness and communication as sort of the skillful communication as the two wings we need to fly.
Oh, I love that image. I'm always such an image person, right? That makes so much sense. These two wings and how we need both and how we can't just, identify the reactivity, then what do I do? Like what can I and what do I do in that moment? Something that I was thinking about, and I'd love to get your perspective on is, similarly, what I could totally relate. You can see my face. I was like, yes, so many things that tell you like what to do, but even attachment parenting and like some of these like lovely things, like if I didn't get that growing up, like, and then I'm just supposed to like, make eye contact and, have these, this loving connection with your child when I don't even know how to do that for myself or never got that. And then, it's like, it's to do that you're supposed to just be able to do, like, and like what you're saying too, like, well, just say this when they, respond, forgetting you have this whole, amygdala hijack,
it's like
responses and all of that, right? Like all of that's going on that we need to tend to. But I want to hear what you think about, because one of the ways we look at applying that, and being with that reactivity for our own, growth and development is that in our upbringing, we have this unfinished business, we have, wounds, our personal triggers, but that just what you're talking about, this mindfulness, and then, the being with it and, bringing it to focus can actually heal the generational patterns. Right. And we use a model called the right developmental model where, we are aware that we have developmental gaps. When we can learn about that and find like, a reactive moment, that's actually a time, it's a gift. It's a time, that for my healing, right? And that we can, in this relationship with our children, have our own healing while we're providing the best intentional environment as we can. So I'd love to hear, that, because the word that really stuck out, for me, or wanted to bring to focus was our own, healing in this interaction.
Yeah, absolutely. So one of my greatest teachers is the Zen master Thich Nhat Hanh, who's a Vietnamese Buddhist monk. He was nominated by Martin Luther King Jr. for a Nobel Peace Prize in the 70s. Incredible author, activist. And one of my favorite sayings of his is, "No mud, no lotus." And I love no mud, no lotus, because we look at these challenges and these things and we just like want them to go away because they're so difficult and uncomfortable. And we don't want to like yell at our kids and be upset. And we don't want any of that. But the truth is, no mud, no lotus. We need the poop. We need the rotten, desiccated vegetables, like we need all the garbage, right? Like a good gardener knows you need all this garbage. Yes. and you need this rotten material. And from that rotten, nasty mud, that's where the seed of the flower is nourished, right? And it's the same,
which goes against so much of our thinking, right? Like that seed's supposed to be in like, I don't know, sanitized, I don't know, some picture we have of like what that container for that seed is. But so I just really want to underline what you just said. No, it's the mess, it's the dirt, it's
the poop.
The poop.
Those gardeners, they go and buy themselves some poop from like stables and stuff. It's pretty amazing. It really is the poop. We need to have these challenges so that we can grow. Otherwise, we don't have if we're never have these challenges, we sit up on a high horse, we become judgmental of others. These things give us compassion for ourselves and compassion for others and compassion for our children. When we start to see, this is hard. I am just like you. I'm just like you. I suffer just like you. I have made mistakes that I don't like, just like you. What any human being is capable of, that's within that range for me too. And so when we can acknowledge that we have this full range from the ugly to the beautiful within us, then, we have to like, there's a saying I also like, to walk with your shadow in front of you. And the idea is like when our shadow is behind us and we want to push it away and we run from it, it gets bigger, it's scary, we don't want to look at it. But when we walk with our shadow in front of us, we say, yes, I'm human. I've got these things. I've got some ugly stuff. And that is within my past, my heart, my emotions. Like this is part of what it is to be a human being on earth. And when we can accept that, it's only when we can accept that we can do anything about it. We can't do anything about it. If we can't accept it, when we can accept it, we can say, yes, okay. And we can have some compassion for ourselves. And when we have some compassion, we say, this is hard. I'm not living up to my standard. I'm not feeling the way I want to be, we can say, okay, what do I need to learn? What do I need to learn from this? And then that's the start of all the healing. That's half the process, is just being able to look at it, to being brave enough to be acknowledge and accept what's there is like half the battle. In meditation and in mindfulness, we're acknowledging what's arising in the mind, right? In that whole process, we're acknowledging, thoughts, anxiety, planning, we're acknowledging those things. And as we acknowledge them, as you know, like, it's kind of like, then that whole path is just disappears, kind of like it just floats away, like with that acknowledgement. And rather than kind of a rumination that goes spiraling down and down and down, you've just interrupted that whole pattern in its path just by simply acknowledging and accepting what's there. It's a very, very powerful tool.
I love that. The awareness, and how that is just so much more of the game than any of us, realize, or we make it a lot harder. But bringing things to consciousness and awareness like that, and then naming it, and that shifts things, whether we do anything else beyond that so shifts things. I'm wondering if you have any, like, either for you personally or in your coaching practice, don't have to put you personally on the spot, but either one, have an example, like either a situation or something where we can kind of get a picture of this in real time. Hi, I'm so excited to share with you my 2024 Spring Equinox Self-Mothering Retreat that's happening this March 2024. And I would love for you not only to consider it, but to attend. But in considering it, hey, just knowing that you would be leaving cold weather, if that's the space that you're in, and coming down to just magnificently beautiful, warm, nourishing place of Zihuatanejo, Mexico. Zihuatanejo meaning land of the goddess women, and coming to really take time for yourself. Okay. And that, I am learning more and more, isn't just a nice thing to do or something extravagant or something selfish. It's essential. And I really want you to take it seriously, to consider, just think about, what would it take for me to go? It's a 5.5-day retreat, getting from where you are, getting there, landing there, and then being in a space that is all about you. It's all about nourishing you. It's all about tuning into you, using everything around us, the nature, the food, the beautiful people, the rituals, ceremonies. I bring it, we really bring it. And we go deeper and deeper as the days go on, and we release, we let go, we bring in what is nourishing, what is empowering, what is that space of just really divine feminine energy. And we do it in the community of women. It's not for everyone. I will be honest, if the idea of leaving and not making it work, or it's just too hard, not for you. If the idea of, spending that amount of time inwardly focused and going to that level of self-awareness doesn't sound like something you're willing to do or put the time and energy into, then it's not for you. And it's good to know that, right? So this is for people who are serious about what it means to mother themselves, what it means to take time for ourselves, and that gift, and what that gift can bring to us. It was originally right after my fall retreat. It filled right up. But now some people, it turns out, are not able to come. So I do have a handful of openings. And if you're listening to this and you're willing to take that step, please reach out to me. We can do a discovery call, or you can put a deposit down. I would love that. And you can do that by going to my website, www.drgertrudelyons, DrGertrudelyons.com. Go to events, and there you go. It'll all be there. There's a beautiful page there for you to explore. I look forward to hearing from you and then seeing you on my spring retreat.
Well, I think that, I can share my own examples, but just one of the things that, as far as acknowledgement goes, what I teach in mindful parenting is a lot of like acknowledging of what's happening. Acknowledgement is a huge piece, saying what you see for what's happening. So if you go into a situation where kids are fighting and it's a mess, oh my goodness, you're yelling. you're yelling. This is a mess. There's stuff everywhere. Just saying that out loud,
That's
it just
great.
kind of takes that temperature down just a couple notches, which is great.
Mhm.
For me, acknowledgement can be a way to shift from unskillful language to more skillful language, even in a really, really heated moment. So the last time my daughter really, really triggered me, she found something new. It was when my youngest one was 9 and we had been watching, we'd have family movie night. And at the end, she didn't want to go to bed. It was like that whole like manic late at night thing. And so I'm like, okay, I'm just going to ignore this behavior, go to bed, whatever. I don't need to acknowledge this. And then she just did something and I forget what she said or did, but then she started laughing at me and it was like, it was like the volcano erupted. It just like triggered something in me, being laughed at was like, woo, I was brought back to something. And I remember I'm trying to like read my library book and I was like, okay, this is not working. I really, really triggered right now. So I stood up and I yelled, but I yelled skillfully. And this is where that acknowledgement comes in. I'm feeling so angry right now. And I slammed the door and I walked outside, threw my library book onto the driveway. Poor library book. But it took me a good 20 minutes to cool off, like walking up and down the street. But that piece that I had been practicing and training in for so long, which was just saying what you see, acknowledging what's here. It allowed me, even in a moment where I was like way over triggered,
charge was huge,
to just say something that wasn't harmful, not blameful, not, just to say something skillful instead of that. And that acceptance and acknowledgement there saved me, I think, from making doing something worse.
It's such a powerful example, Hunter. And I want to break it down a little bit because even though you're saying it, like all of the work I had done to have that moment, right? And because one, having the wherewithal in the heat of the moment to use a skill that you've been practicing is like Olympic gold worthy, right? Like, and, so one, I want to acknowledge you, for that. And someone might say like, oh, what's the big deal? She just said she was angry and got up. Like, no, it is such a huge deal. and to, as you said, the skillful anger, like you're not denying your anger, you're not trying to, you were a little, or just like, I'm just going to pretend this isn't happening until she hit, and our kids know, like they'll keep going sometimes until they find that point. Right. And, so then, that shot it way up. And like you were angry. You were probably hurt. Excuse me for saying something. Not,
armchair expert. I love this.
Yeah. Is sometimes under our anger, we have hurt and fear, so sure. It brought up that hurt, right? You named that, like you said, like, I don't know what it was, but I'm over here thinking like, oh, like, ouch, I'm sure there was like, something hurtful from your past or whatever. So hurt. And sometimes we can tend to that piece. You could have said that, like, you hurt I feel very hurt right now. Either way, like the saying that I'm angry and then taking yourself, giving yourself a timeout, so to speak, it's not denying it, and some of the neuroscience, right? The name it to tame it, right? Like that amygdala hijack and just how powerful it is of a skill to name that in the moment and then go tend to yourself so that we can bring ourselves back to our frontal lobe, right? Like bring us back to some higher functioning so we can then kind of deal with the situation. So it's such a beautiful, powerful example. But then I can see, but you also teased up this other work, like, well, what is that hurt? Ouch, like that is a hurt I need to then tend to for myself so that I can take that into my coaching. I don't have to work that out with her, that's mine, but that's the gift she gave you in that, and like you said earlier, it isn't just about fixing, that problem and finding that tool that'll, handle our kids. It's like, no, like then I can take that gift and go work with it. And my own healing, can come about with it. And then one other thing I want to name on unpacking this is, on our journey to, because you're at like kind of expert level with that, Olympic level with being able to name it in the moment, naming it later, like we may like break down and just kind of like say the mean thing to our child, but we can later come back to and say, I realized that, something else was going on with me. I was hurt. You don't have to like go full into like what you learned, but just naming that you acknowledge that, the calling you the name wasn't like, my highest and best in that situation. And we can still repair the breach, right? We can go back and repair it the next day, hours later, days later, week later, that
Yeah.
time doesn't really matter. So I'm wondering if you've had experience with that also.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, I think we tend to forget sometimes with kids that this is a relationship, just like any other relationship, and
Yep.
it's a relationship that needs tending. You need to, I think we need to kind of like go out on dates like with our kids and,
Yes.
and, cultivate closeness when there's some disconnection. And just like in a friendship or just like with your partner, yeah, if you did something that wasn't so skillful and you need to apologize, there's never a time limit on that. There's never a time limit on that. We can always go back and say, hey, I'm sorry. I had an experience when my oldest daughter was 6. We went on a retreat with Thich Nhat Hanh on the last time he came to the United States. And it was a big retreat with a bunch of people. We camped out. It was pretty cool. But we had this experience and I was taught, and I've learned that tool many times. And it's a tool I bring into mindful parenting. And then it's a tool of beginning anew. And what we did is there was parents and children. We all sat in a circle and we took I took a flower and I put it in front of my daughter, Maggie. And first I watered her flowers. So I told her what I appreciate about her and, just did a little flower watering, we'll call it. And then I expressed my regrets. And I cried my little eyes out and I said, I expressed how sorry I was for the times I had yelled at her and scared her. And it was so, and for me, it was expressing an apology for all these times when I was little, where at that point, I felt somewhat blocked in doing that. Like for some reason, we don't feel like we should do that with our kids. And it came out and it was such a cleansing experience. It was a way for us to literally begin anew. From this moment, we had this cleansing, healing moment, and then we could begin anew from here. And I truly believe that we can begin anew in any moment. We can bring kindness and curiosity, right? Like those are the mindsets of mindfulness, kindness and curiosity to each moment and say, okay, can I bring kindness to myself instead of judgment, right? Can I bring curiosity to what's really going on for me? And that's really how we heal things, is we start to understand it. We understand and we look at deeply, but with kindness, right? We don't look at deeply and cynically or clinically. We look at it with kindness. And that is really the healing. It's like the healing salt water of our hearts.
That's such a beautiful, thanks for sharing that example. And because I think that's a real big, I've named it as one of the myths in mothering, that it's not okay to have our feelings with our children. I think that, kind of dominates in our culture. And I make the distinction, like, it's not okay to have irresponsible feelings and emotions with our children, but our genuine feelings, and you being so present, with this, regret and sharing from your heart like that, like what a gift, right? And then we're also, training them that our feelings are okay, and they're beautiful, and we can learn, and we may not always be responsible with them, but we can learn to. So thank you. I think that I would love, that myth to be broken so badly. So was there more you wanted to say about that?
No, yeah, absolutely. I agree. In mindful parenting, I teach communication skills, and I teach people how to express themselves honestly and authentically to create, be more effective. And being more effective in a lot of cases means letting your kids know how something they did affected you, affected your ability to get around in your life and how it made you feel. And sometimes parents feel worried about that. Moms feel worried, like, oh, am I putting my feelings on my child? Am I making them responsible for my feelings? The truth is that we are with our kids. We live with them, and all human beings, we are interdependent. We're not fully independent. No human being is fully independent. Nothing is, right? So we are interdependent with each other. And so they're going to know that what they do affects us. And if we we lie about that, like that, you know what I mean? Or try to hold that back, they get that message. And so, yeah, you're right. We want to be responsible, but we can be honest and authentic without giving them all our baggage, right? We can all take responsibility for our stuff, but we can be honest. And that is what you're talking about there, is that's the middle path, right? It's like, we're not denying, we're not putting it all on you, but we're taking responsibility, but we're also being authentic. And our kids have incredible BS meters. So you might as well, because they can see right through those lies.
It's amazing, isn't it? We don't give them enough credit, sometimes for their capacity. And yeah, I'm so glad to have you underline that. So I think we've been in this arena, just maybe not as explicitly. So I'd like to kind of make it more explicit, but something that I know we both, feel strongly about, but I want to hear you talk more about, like, what does it look like? What is putting our own needs first and how that helps our kids? So like, what is putting our own needs first mean to you, and what does that mean in relationship with our kids? And just kind of, let's kind of, because it's been our whole conversation, but now we can, make it explicit.
I mean, Gertrude, you know how I feel about this. Like, it just drives me bananas. Their whole mommy martyr culture. I really do think it really is the remnants of all this patriarchal women not being valued BS that we have just inherited, and it's just kind of in the water around us, right?
Yes.
We swim in it. And so many women feel guilty for like taking care of their needs. Like, if you have a baby and you need a full night's sleep, a lot of women may feel guilty about, having their child maybe sleep in a separate space from them and all those things, or even saying, or even having bodily autonomy. Moms feel guilty about saying, no, I don't want to be touched right now, and so many ways, like taking care of our needs, talking to our partners about all these things. And it drives me batty, because it's when we do this, it's not good for anyone. It's not good for our kids. We give our kids a lesser version of ourselves, and really giving our kids the best version of ourselves is the best thing we can give them. Better than vacations and toys. And, it's so much better for you to take that, maybe whatever it is, that hour to go to the gym and have that time for yourself, and have your kid. Yeah, they're going to reach out for you. Yeah, that's their job. But to have them miss you a little bit, then that's fine for them. And it's good for kids to have a good attachment relationships with lots of other people, grandparents and caregivers and fathers. And we need that, I feel really strongly about this. It's funny because I have a lot of clients who come to me and with these challenges, and we need to recognize that our self-care is not only not selfish, it is actually our responsibility. Like, it is our job to take care of our needs, make sure our needs are met. It's our job to make sure we're fulfilled. It's our job to heal our stuff. Like, that's all our work. It's not our job to deplete ourselves just for the sake of like being in the same presence as our kids, because then we can't model. And that's really what we do best is modeling. My mom, this is something that was not a challenge for me. Like, my mom was she had her challenges, but, and I see some ways where she's pretty like, pretty traditional in some ways. But I remember, when I was a kid, one of the things she did was we had a lower middle class household. We basically lived more or less on her nursing salary. But she went and took herself to horseback riding lessons every week for years. I spent all this time at the barn, and it's not really like a super inexpensive sport.
No, not at all.
But it was never a question. It was never like a debate or a question. It was just like, she did that for herself. And that was her thing that she did. And I munched on a big carrot and sat in the barn and pet the horses. And that was fine. There was no question of like, oh no, what's going to happen? And I feel like that was such a powerful role modeling for me to say like, yes, like her needs mattered. Like this thing that just simply gave her pleasure and time for herself, that mattered. That was important. It was never in question. And I really appreciate that example from her.
Wow. As you know, like resonate with you on the passion around this, and just feel like the implications of us, living in this outdated paradigm is hugely costly to ourselves and the world, and, how we need to get educated in it enough so that we can start making the choices. But then what a gift your mom gave you, right? To, everything that you mentioned, an activity that wasn't cheap given, what she does, so that the typical paradigm would be like, oh, I should give my daughter horseback riding lessons, and then I'll sit and watch, like, yearning to do it myself, but no, she should have it. And, maybe if you would ask if I could have them too, she might have, but that's not the point. She picked something that she knew she wanted to do and she did it, and she brought you along, like, awesome, and the education that you were getting, whether she was conscious of it or not, wherever that came from for her, like, awesome, way to go. And then you get to build on that, and you're aware of what that gave you, and how, you saw a woman value herself. And I think that's the big thing. Like, if we're not valuing ourselves enough, then we think our value comes from like giving it all to our kids, or,
Yes.
to something, because we haven't learned to value ourselves enough, and then we feel needed by them. And kind of like what you said, when they get upset that you're going off to do this thing for you, that we're like, oh, what will happen if they don't need me anymore? And I think that's something that, gets in the way for women to actually make that choice, is they feel like they're going to lose something rather than, gain not only their children's respect, but their own nourishment, their own, development of their value.
And also our kids need us to fail them
Yes.
like in all these myriad of ways throughout their life. Like, we cannot meet every one of their needs, and we should not be meeting every one of their needs.
No.
Otherwise, we're going to end up with like the college counselors call the sort of generation of kids who've been helicopter parented, they call them teacup kids, because they're like fragile little teacups that can't handle life in college. Like, your kids need you to say, no, make your own lunch or whatever it is, like, to have some boundaries, to not be there every second. They need practice in that. That's life. It's not like we have to manufacture, random hardships for them. No, but we can take care of our own needs, and we can take care of our kids' needs. And when we take care of our own needs, we model valuing ourselves. We have to think like, do you want your kids to be self-sacrificing when they're older? Is that what you want for them?
Mm-hmm.
Don't do that in front of them. Stop it. They are terrible at doing what we say, but they are really great at doing what we do. So you have to live what you want your kids to learn.
I love that. I cannot agree more. And, the other thing that comes to mind and kind of added to my repertoire of like, in parent coaching and training, the active parenting model. And they did, it was like a 6-week course or whatever. One of the big things that I took from that, and that image, like, still, and I think it just, if there's, like I said, I love images, the one around the butterfly coming out of the cocoon, right? Have you, this one? And
refresh me.
And now I even want to say, and I just can be so wildly off. Like, it was someone who, like, Thich Nhat Hanh or someone like that also, that, like, someone of that caliber that I think brought this forward. But, imagining, watching a butterfly come out of its, and you see it like just struggling, and you're like, oh, like just, you just watching it, you're kind of like, oh, they watched it struggle like that. And so then when the next butterfly went to, come out of its cocoon, the person like helped them, right? They're like, well, you shouldn't have to like work so hard at that. Like, here, let me like kind of like, peel this away for you. Let me like, it's uncomfortable for me to see you, struggling like this. So I'll help you with this. And yeah, as you can imagine, like, so what happens when they did that is the butterfly came out and just like fell to the ground, because that whole act of getting itself out of the cocoon was what built the muscles.
Yes.
That struggle, that pain, that like, and just, was what brought got the like blood flowing in its veins, built the muscles, so that when it was finally through, it actually could fly. And if, that course was worth its weight in gold just for me to like hold that image for myself. But because I think it brings in both, right? The like, also like as a culture, how hard we are we think pain is bad, we just, pain is bad from childbirth on, like, the whole goal is to get rid of it, medicate it, like dampen it, minimize it, where, not like suffering, not like, brought on like, physical injury, but, our emotional pain is important. We need to let our kids, just as you're saying, we need to let them struggle. I'm just giving a visual to what you were saying around the importance of them failing, the importance of them, working hard at something, and not like taking it away from them because they're having a hard time with it. So it's my way of like just taking that point home, Hunter.
I love
it's so
that.
important.
Yeah. Like growth is outside our comfort zone. It's by definition uncomfortable.
Yes.
And we're a culture that's all about comfort. And it's interesting. Like one of the places parents really struggle is homework, right? Like,
yes.
Can we let our sixth grader fail at something? Like, can it be their problem? Because homework, I have to say, parents, like moms, homework is not your problem.
Nope.
It's not your problem.
I totally
It's
agree
your
with you.
kid's problem. It's between your child and the teacher. And you can be a helper, you can be a supporter, but it's not your problem. And it's so hard. I get it. It is so hard for us to let go and let some consequences happen. But it's so much better for our kids to fail and learn from something in sixth grade than it is in like when they're 20 in college or whatever. We need we need to let them fail at some things. We can be helpers. We don't have to put up obstacles, but you're right. You're absolutely right. And there's that challenging, and what that requires from us is important, is that it requires us to steady our nervous system, to steady our hearts, to be that calm, grounding presence that they can return to. And that's all the work of the healing and the grounding that you talk about.
I love it. So 2 more things I want to do. One is I wanted to let my audience know like how they can find out more about you and your mindfulness coaching, your book, your podcast, all that good stuff. And then I want to, close with one more thing. So we'll of course have it in the show notes, but I would love to hear from you some of the ways.
Sure. You can find Raising Good Humans anywhere on audiobook and wherever you find books, and listen to the Mindful Mama podcast. We have some amazing guests coming up. It's Dr. Gertrude Lyons coming up at some point in the future. And we have over 290 episodes, 300 episodes or so at the moment. So we have an amazing guest going back. It's a great resource. And if you're interested in mindful parenting or learning about what we do, I also do a teacher training. That's all at mindfulmamamentor.com. And one more. I'll give you Instagram. Yes. Tell me what you think of this episode, what your takeaways are at Mindful Mama Mentor.
Love that. Those are so beautiful. And I know we could keep going, and I'd love to, because I've loved my conversations and our resonance with each other. So in closing, like one last comment as a way both to kind of, help our listeners discover a way they can mother themselves, because I'm all about, and we're all about valuing and mothering ourselves. What is a way that you mother yourself that maybe some of our listeners could take on either as a practice or a thought, or one kind of practical, and what does that mean to you?
Well, for me, mothering and taking care of myself means offering myself both challenge and ease. And so I wake up in the morning and I say thank you to the universe, and I do my meditation practice every morning, and I exercise some point throughout the day, and I do pretty challenging workouts. Sometimes I do these body pump where I'm pressing up this barbell. It's pretty awesome. But so I challenge myself, and I'm pretty rigorous, but also offer myself ease and comfort in ways that, we don't always have to be growing outside our comfort zone. You know what I mean? We can we can have that balance of also inviting in that ease. So reading a novel where an ending, is not going to be just terribly destructive and heart-wrenching, read something with a happy ending, watching comedy. I've been a much bigger fan of comedy than I ever was. And just giving myself permission to have things that make me laugh and feel good as well, also in my day. So those are the ways I mother myself at the moment.
Those are beautiful, Hunter, and, doable, but would take mindfulness and practice to do. But I love the combo of how did you say it? Ease and
growth and ease.
Growth and ease. Yeah. Growth and ease. So beautiful. Well, it's been a pleasure. Thank you. I can't wait to get this out to everybody. I know they're going to love it. I have. So I can't imagine that they won't. So thank you again.
Thank you. And thank you so much thank you for having me. Thank you for having the podcast, for sharing your voice. It's really beautiful. I really appreciate, everything you say. And I'm so glad we've been able to connect like this. So thank you so much.
Thank you so much for choosing yourself and taking the time to listen to this podcast. As always, please rate, review, and subscribe to Mother. Subscribe to Mother. It helps other people who need this message, aka all women. Well, actually, everybody, men included. I'm honored to have you on this journey in mothering yourself. Remember, change is uncomfortable, but it's beautiful, and it starts with us. And if you can't wait until next week's episode, follow me on Instagram and LinkedIn at Dr. Gertrude Lyons or at my website, drgertrudelyons.com. I'll see you next time.